one of the things I love about history is it helps transform me in such a way that, for instance, when we look at something as seemingly basic, for instance, as a painting, a religious painting that comes from the Renaissance, it seems so completely laid out, and you think, I mean, how else would you demonstrate? In some old textbooks, you might see this as, in some ways, the pinnacle of how you show three-dimensionality on a flat surface, right? This is just one of the truest ways of doing it. It's something called linear perspective, right? So this is a very pixelated version of all things converge on a central spot. This is the way we demonstrate optical truth, right? This is a little perspective. And what I'm hoping to do in Unit 3 is exploit this idea of visual linear perspective and perspectives to actually see a variety of different ways of conveying truth, right? Conveying the ways in which human beings can see and storytell and look at things that is in some ways really humbling and also expanding, right? Like if prehistoric people can observe the natural world in a way that I don't even have the brain structure to do, what is it when I say, yeah, this is how you convey a scene, and Chinese painters say, no, if you want to tell a story visually and it's a scroll that keeps rolling, then what we're going to do to actionize the scene is we're going to show you from one side, sorry, I'm all over the place, one side, a perspective as though if you're now remember, if you're rolling the scroll, you're looking at it from a particular way and then you're rolling by it. So you're going to have to look at it in another way, right? So it has multiple perspectives. What is the function? What is the way in which your culture is using the way you see the world? It functions in a different way, oftentimes around your values. And that for me is such an incredible mind-expanding challenge that I want to bring before us in literal ways. Like we are literally looking at different perspectives, right? And we're going to do that again, hopefully. I'm really considering the Baroque, in which they're bringing in a different perspective. This is up on the ceiling, up in Rome, of a cathedral, in which real life, a real ceiling, is blending with the miraculous, breaking through into our world. Can that be a way? We are literally looking at a dramatic perspective, but it's also this idea of a different perspective. So these Christians are trying to enable for their pious viewers this idea that maybe heaven is not as far from you as you'd think. And we saw an example of that earlier in class, right? And so that's another unit that I'm thinking about, this idea of different viewpoints. Or let's look at it another way, right? So we're painting landscapes, we're painting portraits, we're painting scenes from our everyday life, right? So this is a Poussin who's painting a landscape and it's beautiful. And he says it's done. Well, Monet goes and paints this sketch, right? And then he doesn't leave it as a sketch, it becomes a finished product. This is something that he then exhibits at one of the most famous sort of first impressionist exhibitions. So one person says, this is done and this is art. And this guy, Monet, says, no, this can be done. This is art, right? So when do you say something is finished? Again, a different perspective here. And then, so those are some of the examples. I'm toying around with the possibility also of looking at different ways in which people looked at nature with gardens. So I'm going to get a little bit of a feel from you all, and I'll, as I did even with this last unit, I heard some of the things that interested you and I shifted. I just like tossed some lessons over my shoulder. But that's kind of the vibe, this idea of literal and metaphorical perspective, different perspectives.